Hello and welcome to Module 3 of our Angular series. Let's just recap what we learned in the last session. We learned about Angular event binding and specifically the click event, right? We also learned about the Angular ngIf directive, and we saw how we could use it to have elements appear on screen as well as disappear from the screen or the document object model. We also saw how the router outlet directive is the most important part of Angular routing. We saw how the Angular router link directive works, where it allows the user to navigate to a particular component. We also saw how the router link active directive works by keeping track of the current link that the user has clicked on. As mentioned in the last session, we're going to deal with the store component today. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to first add a heading for our store, right? So when the user actually comes to the store component, there's like a welcome there. Then we will add a link to the cart component so that from the store, the user can click a link which will take him or her to the cart. And then we'll add functionality for the total number of items in the cart. Now, if you visited e-commerce sites, and I'm sure you visited many, you normally have a cart which indicates the number of items that you have, right, as you shop. So that's what we'll be doing here. We'll then add images with styling for all items to be displayed in the store. We'll insert add to cart functionality for each item. And what this means is we will have a button, right? And when the user clicks that button, that item will be added to his or her cart. And then we'll learn how to share data between the store and the cart component. Let's begin. We know how to get to our project now. We either put in VS Code, right, and we look for our project in the list, or if we don't see it there, then you know what to do. Just type in node.js, right, and then click open. Change directory to your project directory. And then type in code space dot, press enter, and you'll have your project loaded along with Visual Studio Code. Okay, so I already have mine open. We need to come straight to the store component HTML file, and to make it simpler, we just start with the heading. So here we just have welcome to our store, that's the heading. And of course we will style that, right? We are going to have around 12 items in the store. To make things easier, what I've done is I've created a folder and the link for that folder is in the description below. So if you click on that link, you should get access to the images. You can then download them and save them in your images folder, which is within your assets folder. So you can pause the video now, download the images and save them, and once you're done, we can then proceed to add them into our HTML file, right? If you're having trouble accessing the images, or if you're having trouble downloading them, then feel free to post in the comments below, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. If you have already downloaded the images and saved them, we can then proceed to put them into the HTML file. So what I suggest you do is put in the first image, right? So image tag source equal to assets / images and the name of the file, right? The alt text is to make sure that if for some reason the image doesn't render in a user's browser, then this text will appear. So the user will know that this is angel cake. Right? And here now we have an anchor tag. But this anchor tag is, as you know, of course, the HTML tag. And remember, we spoke about hrefs last time, but here we're not really, creating a hyperlink. When the user clicks on this link, there will be a kind of a styling effect that we will put in our CSS file. Right? And I'll show you what that is. So this is just for styling, and you can put a comment there saying just for styling. Just select it like that, and then control and / will comment it out. Then we have the button tag. Now this is the button which you can see we are implementing Angular event binding with. Right? So when the user clicks on this button, remember Angular will be listening in for the click event, and when it happens, in Angular terms, the word used is emitted. So when the click event is emitted, the add quantity function will be executed. But here, unlike the last time, we are sending an argument or a parameter, okay, to the function. And we'll see what we're doing with that in the function. Okay, and that parameter is just the name of the key, right? So note that here we have the styling class as angel, right, for this link, and we also have the function having the parameters angel. They're not really linked, right? That is for the CSS file. This is a parameter. But of course, it does create consistency in our code. So you see this word angel is repeated across. So we know that these lines of code are related to one particular item. Of course, as you may already know, this is the button, right? The last time we had an image. This time we just have text saying add to cart. So that will appear on the button. Okay, so then when they click on add to cart, then this function will execute, and of course we'll see what to do in that function. Right, so once you're done with one image, then what you can do is just copy this down. So Control C and then Control V 11 times. Then you just change a few things. What will you have to change? You'll have to change the name of the file, the alt text, right? The class for styling, right? The name that will appear on screen, the button class, because here this is BTN, but this is BTN1. Why do we have different styling for the buttons? Because their positions are going to change. Okay, and then we have what else do we need to change? The parameter, right? That is going to go in, and that's all. Once all items are in, this is not required for now. We'll come to that later, so you don't need to put that in. Okay, just see that you have 12 images. Once that is done, we can then go to the styling. So come to the store component CSS file. Okay, and for the styling, for the heading, we have position absolute, and the offsets are the top 70 pixels, left 575 pixels, color is white. The text shadow has been taken directly from the about component. So you can go to your about component CSS file and just select that, and then Control C to copy and come back to store component CSS and just paste that in there. Control V. Right, the next is the image tag, and this will be for all items in the store component. They'll have maximum width 170 pixels, maximum height 170 pixels, and they'll have a border of 5 pixels orange around them. You can change the color, of course. And now we are using what is called a pseudo class or the hover selector. And what that does is it allows us to provide certain effects for when the user hovers over the image. Right? Therefore, image hover. And what we are doing is we're giving it a background of almost a black and then opacity 0.3. So what's opacity? Opacity is how visible the image is. So 0 is invisible and 1 is visible. And in between that, then depending on the values you give, you will get a kind of a blurry effect. So we're giving it a 0.3 to create that blurry effect. Okay. Why we are doing that, we'll see as we go through the rest of the styling in the CSS file. Now for the div, we have here display flex. Now what is display flex? Right, so what we are doing here is we are creating what is called a flex container. And the container, of course, is our div or division. Right, and as soon as we declare display as flex, what happens is that all the items that are placed within the div, right, they become what are called flex items. So what this means is that they will display in a row. Okay, that's the default. Right, now we also have flex wrap with the value wrap, as you can see here. And what this does is it will ensure that these images or these items that are placed in the row will then be broken up into multiple rows. Right, so they will not all be compressed into one row. Right, and then we have a gap of 40 pixels. So this will provide a horizontal and a vertical gap between our items or images. And you can see here the maximum width of the div is 890 pixels. Right, so when the width is reached, that's when the breakup of the lines will happen. Right, so the images will move to the next line. So just to sort of help you understand, we have 12 images, right? So we can have them broken up into 4 images per row, for example, and that's what we are doing here. Position is absolute from the top 130 pixels. Right, so remember, the moment you say display flex, we are creating what is called a flex container. In our case, it's the div, and everything within that div will then become a flex item. Right, and because we are saying flex wrap, as I said earlier, these images or this container will be broken up into multiple lines of flex items. Coming next to the first item or the first image, right, all these properties you're familiar with. Margin auto will allow us to place this button horizontally in the center of the image. Okay, and I think the rest of the properties are fine. Coming to the anchor tag, and remember the anchor tag is the one that is being used for styling, right, this one. So for that one, again, I think you're familiar with all these properties. Opacity 0. Now opacity 0 means this is going to be invisible. Right, so what's written there is going to be invisible. Right, but you can see here we have the hover selector, and when the user hovers over this anchor tag, the opacity will be 1, which means the text will be seen. Right, so the effect we are trying to achieve is, we saw there was an opacity for the image as well. Right, so when the user hovers over the image will go blurry, but because we have a hover on the anchor tag as well, we'll be able to see what's written there. And that's the effect we're trying to achieve. So once you've copied for the first image, that is these three, then just Control C, okay, on the 3 and copy it 11 times. Once you've copied it 11 times, now come to the second image or the second item and change that button to BTN1. The position top will be the same, but left will change to 256 pixels. Also change the styling class for the anchor tag. The position from the left will be 280 pixels. Top is the same, 10%. Don't forget to change the hover selector as well to reflect the styling class for the anchor tag. Then we come to the third image, right? And this one will read .btn2. The left position will be 450 pixels. Top will remain the same. Change the styling class name. And the position for the styling, the position for the anchor tag, right, will be left 450 pixels. Don't forget to change the styling class name for the anchor tag as well as the name for the hover selector. We come to the fourth item or the fourth image, .btn3. And for this one, the left position is 640 pixels, top remains the same. Don't forget to change the name of the styling class for the anchor tag. The anchor tag left position becomes 660 pixels, top is 15%. Note how we can use percentage values for the offsets as well. Right? Don't forget to change the name of the hover selector to reflect the name of the styling class for the anchor tag. And then we have the fifth item, and this one now is going to be in the second row. Top is 340 pixels, left is 60 pixels. It should read .btn4. And for the styling class for the anchor tag, the left position is 50 pixels, top is 45%. Don't forget to change the name of the hover selector. So that completes 5 images. Then we have the sixth image. For the sixth one, only the left will change. Left is 276 pixels for the button. And don't forget the button reads .btn5. For the anchor tag, the left position is 230 pixels and the top is 45%. And don't forget to change the name of that styling class for the anchor tag of the sixth item. Also, don't forget to change the name of the hover selector for the sixth item. Then we come to the seventh item or the seventh image. And for this one, the button will be .btn6. The left position 480 pixels. Don't forget to change the name of the styling class for the anchor tag. Right? The position of the anchor tag is from the left 440 pixels. Top 45%. And of course, don't forget to change the name of the hover selector for this seventh item. And then we have the eighth item. And again, the left position is 680 pixels. Right? Top remains 340 pixels. Again, the name is .btn7 for the button. Don't forget to change the name of the styling class for the anchor tag. Position of the anchor tag is left 650 pixels. Top is still 45%. And of course, change the name of the hover selector. So that's the 8th item. The 9th one is BTN 8 for the button. That's the name. Position is left 60 pixels, top 510. So this is now moving to the 3rd row. Right? And then don't forget to change the name of the anchor tag. Don't forget to change the name of the styling class for the anchor tag. And the position is left 50 pixels, top 80%. And of course, change the name of the hover selector as well. And then we have BTN 10. Not BTN 9, which is actually the 10th item. Position of the button is 260 pixels from the left. Top is 510 pixels. Don't forget to change the name of the anchor tag styling class. And its position from the left is 250 pixels. Top is 80%. Of course, change the name of the hover selector for that 10th item or 10th image. .btn 9, that is. .btn 10 is the next one. That's the 11th item. And here the position from the left is 500 pixels. That's all that will change. And then of course change the name of the styling class for the anchor tag. Right? That position is from the left 530 pixels. And then of course don't forget to change the name of the hover selector. And finally we have the last image or the last item. And for that one the position is left 660 pixels. Don't forget to change the name of the styling class for the anchor tag. Position from the left is 700 pixels. Right, and then of course we have the hover selector name that has to change. Right, so I will come to the span and this router link now. Right, but first we'll just put in the styling since we were doing it. So just put the styling in for QTY and .cart as well as .cart1. So if you see cart and cart1, right, border radius is 50% here. Everything is the same, right? So you can just copy that down, except remove a border none in .cart. Okay, otherwise it's the same. .qty position is fixed. I think everything you know here. Display inline block is something new. And this will allow for this element to be positioned really close to another one. Okay, so we'll see that on screen. So once you're done with the styling, come back to your store HTML. We have not put in this anchor tag. We had put in the H2, I think. And then we started with the images. So put in the anchor tag now. And as you can see, we're using the router link directive again, which is going to navigate the user to the cart. And you may recognize now that again we have an image which will serve as a link this time, not for the button like we did in the last session, but this is within the link. So instead of clicking on the link, the user can click on the image itself. So now we need to look for the image, right? So come to your browser. We need to look for a trolley or a shopping cart. So I'm just going to type in shopping cart icon. Right, and of course click on images. Then tools, usage rights, Creative Commons. Right, and then you can choose whatever you like from here. Right, alternatively you can look at the themes here. Okay, and then select whatever appeals to you. Once you selected your image, right click, save image as, and don't forget to change the primary name. Of course, you need to make sure you're in your images folder. So you can save that as shopping cart. Okay. And then once you've saved it, then you can put the name in there. And then we have a paragraph, and within that the span, and this is what we styled. Now here, when we have these double curly braces, that's Angular's interpolation. Okay, that we're using. What's interpolation? Basically, cart quantity is a property that we have defined in our TypeScript file. So if we go to the store TypeScript file, we will see a cart quantity there, right? So that's the same property that we are referring to in the view file. And if you want to show the value of a property in a view file, the way to do it is using interpolation. Okay. Right. So now that the store component file is done, in terms of the view file, that is, come now to your store component TypeScript file. Right. Now we need to figure out some logic for this component. Why? Remember, we need to implement add to cart functionality. So we've done the first part where we put in the button. But what happens when the user clicks on the button? That's the add quantity function, right? And that's what we need to put in now in our TypeScript file. Okay. So before we actually start putting in the code, maybe it's a good idea that we take a look at a slide. So here we have what is called a flow chart, right? And flow charts normally help you think through the logic that you need to put into your function. And that's what we're doing here. So in terms of the symbols, these are called terminator symbols. They're used for start and end. This is the input symbol showing us what's going to come into the function. And then of course, these are process symbols. And then we have the connector symbol showing us where the flow continues. Right, so coming to what's in this flowchart itself, we know that item name is coming into the add quantity function, right? We are sending it through our click event binding here, right? So once that parameter comes in, then what do we need to do next? The user's cart has to have the number of items increase by 1. So that's what we're doing here. We're saying add 1 to cart quantity. Then we are creating an object. Now question may arise, what is an object? And an object is nothing but a collection of properties. In our case, the properties we are collecting are the item description, that is what the user is purchasing, and how many, right? The quantity. Okay. Why are we creating this object? To capture the data. Okay. Now, once the object is created, then we need to, as is written here, append the object to the items array. Now you may ask again, what is an array? And an array is nothing but a collection of elements. What are the elements here? The object we created. So every time the user clicks, there will be an object created and one more element will be added to the items array. Also, you can think of the items array as mimicking the user's cart. right? So every time the user purchases an item, that item is added to the user's cart. Okay, so that's what we're doing here. Now, how do arrays work? Here we have items, and that's the name of the array. Like I said, every time the user purchases the item gets added to the array. So angel cake, for example, first, then chocolate cake, then red velvet, brownie, tiramisu, lemon tart. Now, each of these elements in the array has a position, and as developers we can refer to them by their position. So for example, we would say items of 0, and that's the way to read it. Items of 1, items 2, items of 3, items of 4, and items of 5. One important thing to note here is that although we have 6 elements, the last element has a position 5, right? And that's because the first element has the position 0, and that's true for all arrays. Okay, every array has the first element at position 0. Now this position is also called an index, and so we can have index 0, index 1, index 2, index 3, 4, and 5. Now that we've understood what an object is, what an array is, why we need those two, let's get back to the code and come right to your store component TypeScript file. Okay, we will define, there's no need for you to put in this particular property, we don't need that now. We do need cart quantity, okay, of number type equal to 0. Okay, and here now you can see we are declaring an object property. How do we know it's an object? Because we have these curly braces. Okay, so it's like a collection of properties, right? Because we have now two properties here. One is a string type and one is a number type. Okay, and that collection forms this object. Okay, so put that in, and this is how we declare an array with these two box brackets. Now once we've done that, what is the logic? Like we saw, when somebody buys something, we need to increase their cart quantity, right? We also need to make sure that we have the item description and the quantity ordered captured so that we can display it later to the user in the cart. And we are doing that by here declaring a constant, const constant, called item obj. Note that constants do not have to be declared here. Okay, and we're using that constant to create a copy of this object, right? So at the end of the execution of this line of code, the constant item obj will now have a copy of the item object. So it will itself have item description and quantity ordered. Okay, exactly like that. And then what we are doing is we are accessing the item description. Now this is how you access the property from an object. The object, remember I said, is a collection of properties, and each property has got a key and a value, right? So the key here is item description and the value is an empty set of quotes. The key here is quantity order, the value is 0. So here we are accessing the key item description, and to that we are assigning the parameter that came in, right? And then we are increasing quantity ordered by 1. Okay, and then we are using the push method. Now what is the push method? The push method or the push function is automatically provided to us by TypeScript, and we can use that to append now item obj to the array items. So what I'm going to do here is we will do a console.log. So see what item obj looks like. So item obj, right, so that you can better understand what I'm talking about. So item obj, just put a colon there, plus item obj, okay, plus item obj. And here, after we've appended item obj to the items array, we can also do a console.log, so we can see what the array looks like, right? So we can just say items there, and you can see I'm getting a squiggly there, and that's because I haven't used the keyword this. Okay, right, so I hope this logic is clear, right? We're just thinking through what we need to do when somebody buys something on the store. So the person clicks on add to cart, the add quantity function is triggered because of our Angular event binding, right? The parameter comes in, we add one to the user's cart quantity, right? We create an object, and we know why we need to create an object now, right? We assign to each of the keys in the object a certain value, right? In case of the item description key, it will get the value of the item name that came through, right, to that parameter, and then to the key quantity odd, we will just add one, and then we will see what that is on screen. And of course, we are appending to the items array the item object. Okay, now that that is done, we can actually go ahead and execute this and see what happens, right? So we need to compile. If you went through VS Code, just type in node.js, right? Click open, change directory to your project directory, right? ng serve, press enter, and your compilation should begin. If you went through Node.js itself, then come back to your prompt, type in ng serve, press enter, and your compilation should begin as well. Once the compilation is done, we can now go and see what our code looks like. Okay, one thing which is a very important point. So come to the app routing module file. Okay, and we don't really have a router link for our store, right? Did you realize that? We don't have a router link. We do have a path, but nowhere have we specified the path in our outer links, either in the app component or anywhere else. And so what we do is we put in a path here with an empty set of codes, and we specify the component as store component. So what Angular will do now, or what the router will do, is it will go through these. Yes, it will find store there, and it will find the component, but there's no router link, so it will fall through until it comes to this one. This becomes a default path, and so it will take us to the store component, right? So put that in, and you don't need to compile again. If you have errors, I'm not sure you will, but if you do, then just recompile it. And now you should see something like this. To look at the styling first before we actually, try to see how our logic is working. Remember, we use the opacity 0.3. So when I hover over the image, right, this gets blurred. But then when I move in, then I can see the name of the cake, right? And I can do that for all. And this is actually the anchor tag, or that link we use, right? Which we styled. Okay. And then you can see your button which says add to cart. Right. So that's in terms of the styling. For each one of them, you will see, the name of the cake as you hover over the image. You will see the image go blurry, and then you will see the text or the name of the cake, right? Also see the little border that we have, and also our little welcome there, which has the same text shadow as we had for the about component. Now we need to look at how our logic works. So for that, right click on your page, click inspect. Okay, so that we have access to Chrome developer tools. Come to the console, and now let's click on add to cart and see what happens. So add to cart, right? I can see the item object, but I cannot see what it is. We look at that now. Click on the array and you will see what we added. Okay, so before we go any further, let's just correct that. So that's happening because I didn't put in the key value pairs I wanted to see. So come back here, and instead of saying item obj, we say item obj dot description dot, what is it called there? It is called item description, right? So item description, right? And so we'll say here item obj dash description, and then we put another console.log, and here we'll say item obj dash QTY odd, right? So we'll see that key plus item obj dot QTY ORD. Okay, so now if we go and execute that, okay, it's giving us some errors here. Oh, I think that's fine now. So what happens is sometimes as you're typing in, it's compiling, and then it gives the errors, but once you're done, then as it's recompiling all the time, then you won't have any errors, as you can see here, right? So now if we add to cart, right, we can see the description and the quantity order, and if we expand this is the array, we can see the name of the item and the quantity. Also it tells us the prototype is an array. Okay, we can add again, right? And you will see item description brownie, quantity ordered 1, and now in your array you should see 2 items, so angel and brownie, right? Add one more, and again you will see the item and the quantity, and now you will have 3 items in the array. So you see how this works. Also note how this is changing, right? That span that we used, because we're using cart quantity there as well with interpolation, remember? So that's being reflected there as well, right? I hope you've understood how this works, right? The last thing we need to do is to see how we can share data. But before that, right, I just want to recap what we've done. We added a heading to our store, right? We added all the images with styling. We implemented the total items in the cart functionality, and then we also implemented the add to cart functionality, right? Okay, so I hope all of this is clear. Now let's go and look at how we share data, and that's pretty simple. Just come to your store component HTML file, and remember in the store component TypeScript file we have cart quantity and we have items. Now we want to share this with the cart component, right? So what we're going to do is come to our HTML file, and right down here we will use the selector of the cart component. Okay, so here we have, you can see app cart, and this is the selector from the cart component. How do we know? Go to the cart component TypeScript file and you will see the selector there, right? So you can just select that, Control C, and then come back to your store component HTML file and put that in as a tag. Remember, we spoke about how we can use selectors as tags last time, right? Now, within the opening selector tag, remember this is the bracket that closes that app cart opening tag, right? But between this opening tag, what we need to do is put in this code. Now what this says is we have items in our store component, right? So the one in quotes refers to the items in the current component where we are, that is the store component. Similarly, we have cart quantity. Now what we're going to do is we are also going to put the same items property in the cart component. Okay, so just put this in box brackets now, and then make sure this tag is closed, that is opening tag, and then of course we have a closing tag as well. Now we'll come to the cart component TypeScript file. So come to your cart component TypeScript file, and here we need to import the input directive. We don't need output for now, just import input, so you don't need that comma there. So just import input from the, just leave that in so that we don't have to change, but we just need this. I'm going to delete this output because we don't need it. Okay, and then you can see here, once we've imported input, we can use the input decorator. And the input decorator allows sharing of data from parent to child. So in our case, the parent is store and the cart is a child. We're sharing from store to cart, remember, right? We had our properties first in the store. That's where they're changing. Remember, the logic is in the store TypeScript file, is sharing those properties or the property values rather with the cart. So here we have input decorator with items and input decorator with cart quantity, and you have to just specify it's a number. That's all. And now if we look at our cart component HTML, right, so if we come to the cart component HTML, you can now put this in, right? So here you can see we are using the same line as we had in the store component HTML file. So if I scroll up, you can see this line, right? So you can just copy that into the cart component HTML file. And then we have a div, just says your cart, and now we are using the Angular ng4 directive, and the ng4 directive is used to go through, in our case, an array, right? And for each element in the array, we will do something. So the ng4 is exactly for that. So here we are saying ng4 equal to let item of items. I could even say let I of items, right? But then I would have to change this to I. Okay, so it doesn't matter what you call this here. In our case, item is just going to refer to each element in the items array. whatever you put here is the iterator. So ng4 equal to let item of items, that's the syntax. This is a way to write it. And then within curly braces, which remember is using angular interpolation, we are going to display the description and the quantity order so the user can see what they're ordering as they click on the add to cart button. So we just have that little span, a break tag. You don't need to put this comment in. We have a horizontal line, so there'll be a line drawn there. And then we have total quantity ordered. Okay, so I hope you understood the ng4 directive. It's used to loop over elements in the array in our case, right? And for each element in the array, it's going to display the item description and the quantity ordered. Remember that whatever you write here, right, has to be also mentioned here. And the names, right, remember these are the keys from the object that were pushed into the array or appended to the array, right? And those have to be also the same, right? The names, I mean. So the name should be the same as we used in the store component. Okay, because if we change these names, then it will not work. So just copy this as is. Then we need to do some styling. So come to your cart CSS file and we need to put in the H4 styling. Right, there's nothing new here. Line height is 1.5. You can just leave it as 1.5 there. That's the styling for the span. Right, and then we have the horizontal row and the div. We don't need anything else. Right, the div has position fixed. As you can see, it's going to be to the extreme right because the left we have 1214 pixels. It's going to have a background of a plum color and then of course a border of purple. You can of course change these colors. Maximum width is 300 pixels, maximum height 300 pixels. Okay, so just copy the styling for these, and once you're done, then we can actually go and see how this works in terms of sharing data between components. Just to sum up, right, in terms of what we did just now, we took the selector, right, for the cart component, we put it in here, and the moment we do that, we can then share data, like I said, from the parent, which is now the store, to the child, which is the cart, right? And we do that by importing first the input directive from Angular core, of course, and then we use the input decorator with the properties that we want to share with the cart component or with the child, right? And this in Angular terms is referred to as input binding or one-way data binding. Okay, there is two-way data binding as well. We'll look at that in a later session. There's also sharing data in the reverse direction, child to parent, but again, we'll look at that in another session. So I hope that is very clear. It's an important concept for you to understand. Any questions, please post in the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Right, so now let's go, and we don't need to compile. So this is what you should see on screen. Now watch what happens when we click on the add. And of course, I'm getting this, this styling is going a little awry because our Chrome developer tools is open. So you can reduce that a bit. Add to cart, right? You can see it appears there. Add another one, and it appears there. right? The third one, and it also appears there. Okay, so this ends our session for today. I hope you've understood everything, right? In the next session, we will learn about Angular interfaces and global variables. So till then, take care, stay safe, bye.